We are going through the four immeasurables, and actually this prayer that we did is about that. Maybe I just kind of introduce that. This prayer that may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. That's loving kindness. Be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. That's compassion. May they never be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering. That's rejoicing. And may they dwell in the great equanimity that's free from attachment and aversion. That's equanimity. So this prayer that we say every day is these four immeasurables. So yesterday we talked about the loving kindness, which is actually a wish or a feeling, to develop that feeling of wishing happiness to all the beings, and not only the happiness but the causes of happiness as well. Because as as we discussed in Buddhism, the causes are very important to try to find out what are the causes of happiness, what are the causes of suffering, and thereby then try to change our actions or our behaviors or our reactions or our habits or habitual tendencies that causes suffering, and to try to develop, try to increase and do more and more the actions, reactions, and also the habits that that's causing problems. So this is the practice. So yesterday we talked a little bit about loving kindness, a little bit about equality, and then we come to the compassion. Now compassion and loving kindness, we kind of separate it a little bit, but actually it's not very much different. It's the same thing, but maybe a little bit different in the sense that loving kindness is wishing happiness, wishing good, wishing well. As I said yesterday, kind of radiating a kind of benevolent feeling towards everybody, being nice, being kind, and actually kindness, I think, is a very good word, also very nice word, very very important, and very, I think, very what can you say, nice, important experience. I think I told you once that there's a Tibetan flutist, this plays flutes. His name was what's his name? I forgot his name. Nawang Kechuk. And there are lots of his flutes, records or something. Some of you might have it. It's very nice, very soothing, and he plays at lots of places, and he's very. I liked him so much. He used to say in the beginning. He used to make a prayer, and the prayer is so short. It's just one sentence, one short sentence. And that sentence was, may all beings be kind to each other. Just that. May all beings be kind to each other. I think that concludes, that's everything. If everybody was kind to each other, the problems of the world is almost finished. So it's so, I think, so pity and so really important. It's trying to be kind to each other. And if really that's the whole thing, I think. And I think that's also in essence, that's the teaching of all the religions. In practically, I think that's the teaching of all the religions. Buddhism, His Dalai Lama often says that my religion is my heart, loving kindness. There's nothing else. And when he says that, he's not just saying that it's his own invention or his own. It's the the main teaching of Buddha, it's the main teaching of Buddhism. When Patrul Rinpoche talks about the practice, he says that the bodhicitta is everything. He says that I have read and studied all the teachings of the Buddha, all the commentaries of his teachings, sutras, mantras, all the things. I have listened to all the pith instructions of all great masters of all schools, and I have found there nothing other than bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is everything. It says some teachings are teachings that might lead to bodhicitta, preparations for the bodhicitta. And some teachings are on how to develop bodhicitta and explanation of bodhicitta. And some teachings are the result of bodhicitta. There is absolutely no teaching in Buddhism which is not about bodhicitta. And then that Lama is considered in Tibetan Buddhism one of the greatest, one of the most learned. In the 19th century, there were lots of great masters, very, very learned, very, very kind of, what can you say, popular, great masters, really highly attained masters. And among them, there were three very, very famous. And they were all like not only kind of famous in one school of Buddhism, but in all schools of Buddhism. They were like Jamyang Chenze, the great, Jamyang Kodru, the great, and Patrul Rinpoche. And then somebody asked Jamyang Chenze this question, that at this moment we have so many great masters, but out of that, three of you seem to be very kind of prominent from the point of realization, from the point of scholarliness, from the point of being able to help many beings. Yourself, Jamyang Kodru, and Patrul Rinpoche. Among you three, who do you think is better? So that was a question asked by somebody, a little bit cheeky, I think. And then what he answered is interesting. He said, as far as the scholarship goes, nobody can compare with Patrul Rinpoche. That's the one who said that everything is bodhicitta. He says, among us or among anybody in the whole Tibetan kind of scenario, there's nobody who can even compare with Patrul Rinpoche. He's so learned, he's so well versed in everything. And then he said that as far as benefiting the beings, benefiting the people, he says, Jamyang Kodru is unmatchable. And he's so good. He's so used in his activities, his writings, his collections, his teachings have been so important and so reached so many people that he is the best. Then he said, as far as the experience is concerned, the realization, maybe I am a little bit better. But so therefore, what I'm trying to say is that Patrul Rinpoche is regarded so scholarly, so well versed in all all areas of Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, he says that there's nothing other than bodhicitta. And bodhicitta basically is loving kindness and compassion. And also, I think, if you look into other religions, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Muslim or any other religion, real kind of established religions, then you will find that actually the main practice is loving kindness. There's no one who's saying you should not be loving kind. They always refer to the God, the Creator also, as the merciful, the most kind of compassionate and kind, and also they always also teach how to be compassionate and loving and kind. And one of the most inspiring thing that I've ever come across is actually some of the teachings of Jesus Christ. I used to read the Bible. A lot. Not to try to understand Christianity in the beginning, but more to learn English. Because I think we had in our Tibetology, where I used to study English was a little bit, and there was a clerk, and he was Christian, and not just Christian, but really missionary. And he always tried to comfort people. And he used to go to the marketplace, and every Sunday he used to make his speech and criticize Buddhism and things like that. Really good friends. So he used to tell me, if you really want to study English, you must read Bible. I think how good his motivation was, I don't know. So he gave me a copy. He gave me a copy free. So I read this, and it's true. It's so useful. Really, it's the best way to learn English, because the sentences are very, very short. The problem is the long sentences. Then we don't know what's going on. So very short sentences and simple. It's so nice. I really like English. That English. And I found out that Mahatma Gandhi must have read Bible a lot, because when he writes English, exactly the same English is true. Same English. So one thing, I think you all know this, but what really impressed me was this thing, that people were throwing stones at somebody. I think it was a girl or somebody who was supposed to have done something wrong. And then he goes there and he says, okay, you can throw stones at her. But first, the first stone will be thrown by somebody who has never done anything wrong. And then, kind of stops throwing stones. Nobody throws any stones because they look at themselves and kind of. I thought that was so good. It was the best thing. And it's like that. There are many, many things like that. His life, his teaching, everything is about loving kindness, compassion. And also, I think if you look at the real, His Holiness Dalai Lama was saying, and I think it's very, very true. If Now this is, I think, important to understand, because sometimes people, some people who is supposed to be a kind of a ayat, or a monk, or a priest, or a administrator, or in a religious order, or a religious kind of institution, and does something wrong. And then people say, that religion is useless, look, these people are doing like this. If I do something wrong, because I happen to present myself as a Tibetan Lama, then they say, oh, this Tibetan Lama is, oh, Tibetan Lamas are like that. Yeah? It's not like that. Tibetan Lamas are, even there are good Tibetan Lamas, there are bad Tibetan Lamas, there are idiot Tibetan Lamas, there are totally useless Tibetan Lamas. There are fraud Tibetan Lamas, and there are great Tibetan Lamas. It's nothing like that. You cannot say that Ringu is doing something wrong, that Tibetan Lamas are bad. Or somebody is doing something right, then all Tibetan Lamas are good. That's also not right. Dalai Lama, oh, Dalai Lama so nice. That's it, all Tibetans are like. There was in Belgium once, there was a man called Demba Jansen. He was such a nice person. He was a very good friend of mine, and then he was sent by the Karmapa to do translation, so he came and settled in Belgium. He was so kind and so nice, and so wonderful, trustworthy. And then everybody thought the Tibetans are like that, And then more Tibetans came, and then everybody was shocked. They said, Tibetans, this Tibetan is not like Tibetans. I said, there are not many like him. It's like that, you can't generalize. You can't generalize. So therefore, sometimes the history or things like that, because of some things done by the religious institutions and things like that, then you just say that religion is not good, that is not. But that's something else. Because they were not really practicing the religion. So, if somebody really practices what Jesus Christ says, teaches, then you will become a really good person, a very kind and compassionate person. So the same with many others. So therefore, as His Holiness Dalai Lama says, I've seen really, really good people, really kind-hearted, really bodhisattvas in all schools of religious schools or non-religious schools also. It's not necessary. It's not. That's why there can be some people belonging to Christianity and really great beings, bodhisattvas, like Mother Teresa, for instance. And I am sure there are hundreds, many of them. And they are very, very good-hearted people, and very nice, very wonderful, and really great people. I'm sure in Muslim also there are lots of people like that. There are lots of people. And then in Buddhism also, in Hinduism also, in everywhere, there are those who are not just, claiming to be the follower and just becoming identification, but genuinely practicing, then they're really there. That's because when we actually, from the religious point of view, you can say, from the spiritual point of view, when you say holy person, Bernard was yesterday. He was describing what holy person was, and that was very interesting. But when what, from my point of understanding, what do you mean by a holy person? What do we, how do we identify a holy person? I think, a holy person is not somebody who is kind of necessarily learned. It's not necessarily, there are lots of holy persons who are not learned. There are holy persons who are not even literate. The holy person is not necessarily, famous. There can be people who are totally secretly a holy person. Holy person is not somebody who has been successful, anything like that. What really is holy person? What is the main characteristic of a holy person? Generally, from all world view, I think this is my understanding. I don't know whether it's completely correct. Maybe it's a holy person is somebody who is not selfish. Who is not selfish. Who is selfless. Unselfish person. Who regards others much more important than himself or herself. I think that is the main characteristic of a holy person. If somebody is really unselfish, loving, kind, and means well to other beings, that person I would call a holy person, and I think most of the people will call him a holy person. So therefore, that's the kind of this, from all these spiritual traditions also, the loving kindness is, I think, really the main practice. Not only main practice, but if it is there, then it's a real practitioner, true practitioner. If it's not there, then not really practitioner. I feel like that. And of course, so therefore, and therefore, it is not, that the loving kindness is not like necessarily a kind of, what can you say, have a copyright by spiritual traditions. It can be by anybody. There can be scientists who are like that. There can be, people who have no particular spiritual path or particular kind of, what can you say, belonging to any religions or faith or traditions. It could be the same thing, like loving kindness, compassion. So therefore, that's why I think His Holiness Dalai Lama is nowadays talking a lot about the secular ethics. I think what he's talking about secular ethics, he's talking about this, that we need, the world needs, everybody needs, to have this kind of a certain way of, a certain, you can say, a value that could be and would be, regarded as extremely important by everybody because it is very useful. But it is not necessarily kind of associated or kind of has to be identified with any one particular school or religion or faith or anything like that. So that's why it's the secular in the sense that it is not, it does not need to be associated with a faith or religion or a system. That doesn't mean that the religions, the spiritual paths do not have that. They have to have that too. They need to have that too. Otherwise it will become, universal. So something that could be accepted by everybody and needs to be cultivated in human beings, so that it would be good and useful for oneself, and it is good and useful for others. If anyone has it, then and it would be able to actually save the world from destruction. So when he kind of tries to essentialize this, it comes down to loving kindness. So therefore, this loving kindness and all these things, all these four things are actually same. It's around that. It's just different aspects of that. So therefore, loving kindness is, I think, very, very important. I don't think I need to explain how important it is, because I think everybody understands. If we find somebody who is kind, we feel very good, we feel very useful, we feel drawn, we like it. We love somebody who is kind, and we get benefit from that. Somebody who is kind, then we can approach them, and it's very useful. But then some people think that if I'm kind, people will take advantage of me, and then they are afraid to be kind. They have love, they have kindness, but they don't want to show, or they don't want to express this kindness with the fear that people will take advantage of that. And also other people will say, don't be so kind because others will take advantage. They warn you, they kind of scare you out of it. And then, no, I should not talk to you. I should not talk to strangers. That was I had difficulties to learn what stranger was first. When I was trying to learn English, it was good. And learning a different language is actually very, very important, I think. It teaches you so many things. It's not just the words and kind of what to say, but the language is a culture. You know the culture of the people from through the language. So, what is stranger? Stranger. The teacher could not explain. Because we were learning English not through translation. We were learning English the natural way. And I am 100% convinced that one should not try to learn a language through translation. None of my teachers knew any Tibetan. Nobody. And then they tried to teach you, English, and then, some of my teachers are still there. I met one of my teachers in Oxford recently. He has lots of photos from that time also. He gave me some photos and things like that. The worst thing was, some of the teachers used to kiss me. And they were very nice teachers, and then they ask a question, and they used to be right, and they come and kiss you and say, I'm so embarrassed that, even if I knew the answer, I wouldn't dare to say it. Because we were all kind of supposed to be lamas, and then we kind of little embarrassed by being kissed by a girl. So, because we didn't have that, so stranger was in one word, I still remember. It took many days to understand what stranger was. Because, I don't think we have a word like that in Tibetan. But another was boring. Boring. I didn't understand the word boring, boredom. So we kind of put it, I think you know my story about boredom. We translate it as nyopto. And nyopto means like sleepy. Yeah? Sleepy. And then at the end, after many years, I discovered it's not there. It's a wrong word. But anyway, still like that. So therefore, everybody is a human being. There's no really stranger. So sad. So therefore, loving kindness and compassion. Now, compassion and loving kindness. If you want to kind of distinguish, then we distinguish as loving kindness as wishing well, wishing happiness, and compassion as wishing free from suffering or the causes of suffering. Experientially, then kindness is, like having a good heart, having a nice kind of, what can you say, well-meaning heart, and being nice. But compassion is slightly more active. That I'm committed to try to solve the problem. Like people are suffering, I see the sufferings and problems of pain, and then I really kind of want to do something about that. I want to change that situation. So it's not just being kind, but more, more active, more responsible, more kind of, you can say a little bit getting involved. That notion is slightly there. That's the compassion. So therefore, it is described as not only wishing well, but wanting to free people from the sufferings or the causes of sufferings. So that's the compassion. So therefore, when you are kind of like bodhicitta, we try to. It can be, this compassion can be that you see that I and all other beings really do not want suffering and should not have suffering. So therefore, I have to do something about that. I need to do something about that. And that would be my, ultimate kind of goal, to free people from suffering. If that becomes my way of seeing, or my way of kind of carrying my life in a general kind of direction, then what I need to do educate myself. Maybe I need to improve myself. Maybe I need to learn how to work on my own causes of suffering. Maybe I need to transform myself. So whatever, whether I need to do something on me or something on others, something for others, what kind of action I take doesn't matter, but my aim is that. That's why sometimes people have a kind of difficulties to understand. Like they also say sometimes, you Buddhists talk about compassion all the time. You lock yourself up in a room and say you're doing retreat. What is this? And some people do retreat for a long time, years and years and years. And then what compassion is there? There's no compassion. You're not even seeing people. Anyway, there is some kind of some sense in that. But another way, it's kind of a long-term thing. I say I want to help, and I just kind of go around and kind of run around. It would not necessarily help, maybe harmful also. Because sometimes the most helpful is to be away. Take myself away from that situation is the most helpful, because if you are not needed there, you should not be there. That's helpful. So therefore, just doing something only is not very helpful. You have to have the right motivation, but you have to also have wisdom. How to help, what to do, what would be good to do, and in what way to do things. So therefore, it's important to build up that wisdom, make yourself, strong enough, powerful enough, and wise enough to be able to work in this way. Because if you are totally kind of yourself become a mess, then you are more a burden than a help to anybody. No? So therefore, first we need to work on ourselves, make ourselves more kind of more qualified, more equipped to work for the others, and then working for others. That doesn't mean to say that I should do nothing unless I become a very kind of wise and great person. That's not the way. It doesn't mean that I should not do anything. Of course, I should do whatever I can, but it's also important that I work on myself in order to help others. So that's the idea, and that's important to understand, I think. So therefore, when we talk about compassion, the first, also it's important to see suffering of others, suffering of myself. How much problem is there, how much suffering is there, and how much causes of suffering is there, and how much negative emotions strong in people, how much negative habitual tendencies is strong in people, how strong is the problem and difficulties and pain in the world. That's, I think, important to see. That's what we call understanding the samsara. I think that's very, very important. We need to be very much, prepared for that. Otherwise, and also to understand how difficult it is to help, how difficult it is to free people from suffering, how difficult it is to get out of our own negative habits and negative emotions and things like that. I think this is very, very important to understand and accept right from the beginning. Otherwise, you get frustrated in no time. I want to do something, I want to help people, and then I go and I met the first person, not so nice, and then what is this? And you get floated in, the kind of completely fed up, completely, you just give up. There's no, you can't do anything. You get angry, you get frustrated, you get annoyed, you get also burnt out. You get depressed, and then it's neither useful to you, neither useful to others. So therefore, when we understand deeply the problems and sufferings and all everything, then if we accept that, then we go with that kind of, we know what to expect. So therefore, if I'm not able to kind of transform everybody and everything, and even if I can do a very little thing, I would be, I would be okay. I would not, or even if I can't do much, I still will be okay. The patience. Because when you know how deep the problem is and how difficult it is, even to work on myself, it's very important to me, because sometimes people say, oh, I've been meditating for the last 10 years, but nothing happened. Well, then you have to do it more. Sometimes they kind of, I think the idea is saying that the technique is wrong, or the teacher is not good enough, or, they feel that it's like we are a little bit used to this, the advertisements, that in 7 days you'll become perfect. You don't have to, there's lots of advertisement like that. I never tried, but I wanted to try one. In 7 days you'll become, slim and fit and beautiful, and you don't even have to what you call it, diet. You don't even have to be hungry. That hooked me. I don't like diet. Diet, even if they promise me enlightenment. When they say, even diet is not necessary, then why not? But I'm not sure whether this will happen or not. Maybe I shouldn't say. I'm against fasting. I did my last, I did some fasting, but my first fasting was really interesting. I think I don't know, but it was on the way. So after 57, around 58, so 58 is like around 6 years old. I was maybe around 6, or maybe even a little before. Then there was Ringu. Came to our camp, and a few people died in our group, and many people also, Chinese problems. Then we did Yungne. Yungne is, Yungne is the fasting practice. Today, all day you have only lunch. Nice lunch, vegetarian, you can eat as much as you like. You can drink the whole day, and not wine, but tea or water or things like that whole day. And then next day, you eat nothing. From dawn till next morning, you eat nothing, you drink nothing. You eat nothing, you drink nothing, you don't speak also. Completely. So second day. So after 2 days, then it's finished. That's 1 day. So sometimes people do many times. So they were doing this, and then the lunch looked very nice. Very nice. So I said, I want to do. I want to do. And everybody said, you can't do it. I said, no, I'm going to do it. So I was a little bit like that, It never changed actually. So I went, and the Dhamma was there. I just sat next to him. I stayed there in the morning. I didn't know how to say prayers and things like that. Just there. And then the lunch came, and then I really had a very nice lunch. Then, as soon as I had had my lunch, I said, now it's finished. My new day is finished. So that was my first new day, So later on, after arriving in India, I did a few times when I was a little bit. It was not nice. The whole night I dreamt of fruits. Nothing else but fruits. Nice fruits coming, and it was delirious. Not really dreaming, and then I could smell. Anywhere the food is cooking, I could smell it. Even like long distance. And one really surprised me was I could, tsampa, Tibetan food tsampa, it's just ground barley, which doesn't have any smell, any taste, anything like that. I could smell tsampa from like lots of distance, So that kind of surprised me. I can smell tsampa. So I'm not for fasting. But I got some good information afterwards to confirm my theory is right. Somebody told me that if you fast and then you become, thin, what do you call it, slim, then your body thinks, all the, the fat has, like fat is like squares, and then there is fats. So the square doesn't go off; it just goes empty. So it just like a balloon, kind of flattens. Then you become. But then whatever you eat after that, then the body thinks it's starving. So it immediately makes into fat till it's filled up. So you will become. The more you fast, the more fatter you become. That's what somebody told me. A prominent dietitian. So I fully agree with that. I was so happy with this. I wanted to prostrate. So, anyway, because many people come and say, "Oh, you need to diet." I said, "Oh no," because the dietitians told me. Anyway. I don't want to go into that. Then, no. So the compassion when we talk about, when we try to practice this, when we try to meditate, and when the meditation is sometimes then, think about all these sufferings and problems, how intense they is, and then how much you want to free them from first three or kind of dear and near ones, and then to as we discussed the other one. But there is also one thing which I think is important, especially about our negative emotions. This I think is very important. Right? For instance, we think about like anger and hatred, and think about how that how strong anger or really is deep hatred is causing pain and problem in the person who is overpowered by that. How much destruction, how much pain, how much problems that the actions that is dominated by complete anger and hatred cause of others. How much somebody like totally burning with hatred and anger, how painful it is, how difficult it is, how much suffering it is. So we think about that in ourselves, we feel about that, we feel about others. And then when we really understand deeply, we can actualize it, then we know that that's a very difficult and very bad thing. It's something, it's emotion, which is a kind of, especially if it becomes action, especially it becomes the habit or habitual tendency, and then how much it can create really, hell. So when you really understand this and experience this, then even somebody who is angry, who is kind of hateful, I think your way of looking at that changes. You see somebody suffering, you don't see as somebody who is trying to harm you, it's like enemy. So when that kind of understanding or experience comes, then I think you have understood something. You have got some experience that even if people are angry and hateful, you don't necessarily hate them, but also understand that even can become a little bit compassionate to them, and then you kind of become very clear how important it is to reduce this hatred, to get rid of hatred, to change this negative feeling of hatred and anger into something more like kindness and compassion. So when this kind of experience comes, a little bit more experiential, literally realistic, then I think your compassion is not only intellectual, but much more practical and much more experiential. In this way, I think we look at like anger, but also greed, craving. That group. Too much attachment, too much greed, too much craving, too much wanting, too much desire. It's like, it's a suffering. Many people think that desire is a kind of a nice thing, because I want something, I desire something nice. Well, it is in a way, but when you look deeply, the more you desire, the more you don't have. As soon as you have the kind of desire or wanting or kind of craving, you are actually dissatisfied. You have a dissatisfied state of mind. unsatisfied state of mind. An unsatisfied state of mind is not happy. It's painful. So therefore, the more hungry you are, it's a hunger. The more hungry you are, the more suffering you have. Of course, if you eat a little bit, it's a little bit okay for some time. But that doesn't necessarily get rid of the hunger. You get hungry again and again and again. And sometimes, even if you eat the food, you're still hungry because you see an ice cream. So, the body is okay, but mind, so therefore the mind can never be filled. So therefore, you also see why and how it's not useful, it's not good to be too greedy, too kind of craving, because the suffering, the joy or the peace of mind is not from only wanting and desiring and greed, but by feeling, cultivating a sense of satisfiedness, sense of contentment. When you say contentment, it means satisfied. Now, many people have this idea that if I'm satisfied, or if I have some kind of peace of mind or contentment, then it's very bad because I would not progress anymore. I will not develop anymore because I'm totally contented. I'm happy, so I just sit there like this. There, if you're really content and everything is okay, maybe it's okay not to develop also. Sometimes it's maybe okay. Otherwise, like nowadays, we have this philosophy which is adopted by the world, that you need to increase, you need to product, you need to more and more and more and more and more and more. People can have 5% GDP. That's not good enough. It has to be 6. That's not good enough. 7. That's not good enough. 8%. That's not good enough. 9%. That's not good enough. The more gross national product, the better it is. The more you consume, better it is. The more produce, better it is. The more. Yeah. Is it making us happier? That's the question asked by the king of Bhutan, the former king of Bhutan. And he wrote a book also. And he tries to implement that in Bhutan. What he calls is gross national happiness. So he says, I'm not too much worried about gross national product. I'm more worried about gross national happiness. So I have to make a kind of system through which to find out how high is the gross national happiness in my country. Because if that's there, even if the gross national product is not so much, I have no problem. And so he has a book, and that's all his kind of governance thing, and there's been many international conferences on that. I happened to attend one of them also in Bangkok a few years ago. It's very nice. It's very nice because that's kind of trying to focus the attention of the people and the government on the right direction, because at the moment it's only directed towards like how much you are producing, how much money you have. And then, if you don't have, then you say, oh, there is gone down, the economy is very bad, and then everybody is totally depressed because the economy is very bad, you know. And then everybody says, oh, I have to consume, I have to buy, because otherwise the economy will go down. So I have lots of things, even if I don't need them, because I'm trying to have the economy. And then, you know, and you are working, and producing, and then you are also exhausting all the resources of the earth, and then, and also worried that it will be finished, because they're saying it will be finished soon. Then you are also worried that, you know, with that production, the whole earth is so polluted that you may not even be able to breathe, you may not be able to drink the water, you may not even have water anymore, you know. Then, you know, we're kind of, in a way, devastating all our environment, world. You know, if we have no world, if we have no earth, then we have, you know, we will not be there, because, you know, it's the content. You know, we are the content of that. It's a container. If the container is not there, if there is no glass, there will be no water. So we will be, you know, gone. There will be no GDP. So therefore, I think this, you know, now it's become so bad actually. Somebody was saying in India, and I thought that was really true. He was saying that before, when when people were talking about like development or progress, or, you know, they were talking about like economic development, educational development, you know, social development, all different kind of, you know, developments. And now they said that now if you say development, it only means economy. So all other things not even counted. So it's kind of, the whole thing is like as if there is nothing else but the economy. And you know, economy is for us, or are we for the economy? So therefore, this kind of thing. So therefore, I think to understand that and to try to really see how, you know, this attachment, greed, you know, too much of this, and then in the same way, you know, ignorance, jealousy, pride. You know. So when if we kind of look deeply, I think we will find very easily that all these things, all these negative emotions, what we call negative emotions, they are so, you know, if that is kind of the overpowering drive for us, then it's creating so much pain and so much problem and so much suffering for ourselves and as well as others. So therefore, you know, we need to cultivate something different. We need to cultivate the opposite, the compassion. Because if you look deeply, I think it's time for tea. We go for tea. Most important.